Welcome to a session of Business Startup Training. Today we'll be looking at Black Lives Matter and Black History. Our objective today is to look at some of the dynamics of the black race, some of the challenges, the struggles, and then we're gonna kind of grapple with some of the quotes by famous men who's was once with us. So, just to reiterate our objective, one, we're going to look at Black Lives Matter, the movement, in terms of Marcus Garvey. Then we're going to look at Black history in terms of Bob Marley. Then we are moving on to the struggle, and then we move on to what would change look like, and then we'll move on to will there ever be change? Okay, so let's start off by looking at the first quote by one of the late greats, which is Marcus Garvey. And he said, "If we as a people realize the greatness from which we came, we would be less likely to disrespect ourselves." The greatness from which we came. The key word there is came. Now, if it is back then we came, and we're talking about history, Marcus Garvey died several years ago, a few decades ago, and he said then, which was several decades ago, that there was a history of greatness from which we came. So if he identified the greatness from which we came, and we looking back at him, can look at that, him being great, then we know that there is in itself true greatness that lies beyond what we see in ourselves at this point. And though our current state may be shrouded or covered over with the challenges and various impediments, it does not say that we don't have greatness in our history. Let's move on to the next quote from the late great Nestor Marley. And he said, "Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but yourselves can free our minds." Now, what does it mean to be emancipated? And emancipate means that we're actually moving from one location to the next. And also it says slavery is a mental. We can also be, we may be physically shackled, and slavery has evolved from a physical shackle to a mental shackle. And we need to get to the point where we are being emancipated from that mental shackle. And once having been emancipated, we will be free. So therefore, in order for us to get to that point, we have to think differently. We have to think differently about ourselves. We need to think differently about each other. We have to guard each other and protect each other so that we do not allow others to be enshackled. Now we're having the concept of shackle being the system and being handcuffed and all of those things. The shackle moved from the physical shackle of being a slave, or being slave to slave owners, and being in that shackle to police abusing their authority and shackling us in arrest for in some instances no real reason. The main thing is I am not subscribing to any criminality being to be that ought to be accepted. If we've done something wrong, definitely the law should take its course. But shackling somebody based on the color of one's skin is not something, and is not right. It should not be done. And therefore we need to get to the point as a people we're careful about using the authority to shackle each other and shackle ourselves so that we can be fully emancipated. Now, we can also look at the fact that the current struggle, we have acts that has been enacted. For the one we can look at here is the introduction of the Equalities Act of 2010, and that act provides a legal framework to protect the rights of individuals and advance equality of opportunity for all. Now that's that's the aim of the act. It provides Britain and also the world with a discrimination law which protects individuals from unfair treatment and promotes fair and more equal society. And also, in light of this, in terms of the concept of equality, our intent is to focus on the racial inequalities. So the act in 1976, the Racial Relation Act in 1976, is one of the key acts that is meant to promote equality for the black race. Okay, and is that occurring? Still a struggle, and I think we need to work on that. And I think this is the battleground, having a level playing field whereby one is not viewed based on the color of one's skin, but it is fair for all. And the intent is not to take over, oppress any other race, or the other race to oppress, the black people or us as black people, but to have a fairness where we treat each other with mutual respect. Now, it is important for us to talk about the concept of change and where are we and how to get to the next point. Now, in order for us to talk about the concept of change, we need to look at first of all, in order for us to enact change, we need to identify the problem. What is the problem? What is the problem that has occurred? Accept the problem. So we have identified the problem, then we need to accept the problem. Then we need to also generate solutions. So identify the problem, accept the problem, and then we get to the point of generating solutions. Are we still struggling to accept the problem? Which is why the various instances of protests have broken out in various countries out of the world, because there's not an identifying of the problem and an acceptance of the problem. And if that point doesn't rub through, we will struggle to move forward to the point of generating solutions. Now, when I'm talking about things and say you're going to do things, it's meaningful solutions that will get us somewhere. And then we move on to accepting setbacks. Sometimes when we put things in place, you will have setbacks. You start moving forward and then you go back. It doesn't mean that you didn't intend to change. You intended to change, but you're thrown back. And that throwback does not mean that you should stop, but you should keep going. Learn from failures. So you get setback, you get knockbacks, you learn from it. This is what I put in place, but it doesn't work, so let me change and try to do something different. Be patient, because it is a learning process. We're learning together, we're getting there together. Keep at it until change occurs. And so these are some of the things that one needs to look at in terms of getting us from point A to point B. Now, there's another famous quote by the late great Martin Luther King, and I think I need to read this quote so that you can really grapple with some of the principles here. It says, "I have a dream that one day this nation," now in terms of this nation, it is America, but let's talk about the world nation, because we're divided all over the world by land masses in various locations, but we're united because we're one human race. But it says, "I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves," so my sons and their sons, who are sons of former slaves, the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. That is his dream. He had a dream that one day we'll be able to sit down together as brothers and not see color as a dividing line. And once we get to that point, where we see each other as brother, and it is not them and us, and us and them, but is brother. When we get to that point, then this dream will be a reality. We're struggling. I mean, America's had the opportunity to have appointed a black president, so we're moving. There is move, and we'd like to see it in other places in the world. I'm not seeing. I live in Britain at the moment, but I'd like to see that happening here. But will the environment be hospitable to such a change? Will the idea of things being equal being uncomfortable? I'm trying to make sure that my words do not offend in any way. But the main idea is we are on this journey, and we need to allow for change and adopting. And our intent is not to take over, and should never be that, but to see how we can share our skills and build something. Because if we work together, we'll build something massive and fantastic. Now, what can we conclude from this concept, or from what we've discussed? Black Lives Matter, the Black Lives Matter movement, which we spoke about in terms of Marcus Garvey. We've looked at the Black history and Bob Marley. We've also looked at the struggles, the various struggles that we're having, and we look at what is change, and in order for us to get to some level of change, we need to first of all identify the problem, and accept it, and then move along the various steps to getting solutions and trying to enact those solutions. We might have setbacks, but once we keep going, we'll be able to get there. And will there ever be change? Well, yes. Martin Luther said that he has a dream that one day it's going to happen, and we hold to that dream. That dream may not fully have occurred yet, but we're on the road to it. And so this is my take in terms of Black history and Black Lives Matter. This is Accounting Lecture, and this is Business Startup Training. Thank you. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you.